He's gone? Oh, he's coming. Great. Yay, I'm happy he didn't leave.
So that planning section that you mentioned, is that like the new planning section, right? Not just this, well, not what we're.
Yeah, no, you should make changes to it. I mean, you know, it's your spring break, so take some time. You guys did a lot of work for today, I appreciate that. Okay, here's this for you. I'm not really gonna go through this, you guys know what we're doing. The deliverables are listed there. I might beef this up a little bit to also help be a guide for Matthew and Aaron, who just don't know as much as we all do because we've been doing it together. First things first, I will make an upload thing on Canvas. Please upload the diagrams that you had for today. If you had models for today, thank you, and please photograph them nicely and upload some photographs of them. I'll probably make that due like Monday or Tuesday. And then I will give you, you'll get a midterm grade from me, hopefully before I'm back. I can do some work and give that to you. That'll include your rubric from the first assignment and from this assignment, and go in as your midterm grade. And if you have any questions, you can just let me know. Yeah, so the schedule, we can just look at super quickly. You guys know you'll see Matthew on Tuesday when you're back, and Aaron on Friday. Yes, what I want you to have on Tuesday is a plan and a section for each site. I would take some time to edit that a little bit. I really encourage you to edit that in the 2D drawing of plan and section, as opposed to trying to edit your massing and then cutting what you have. Like you guys know about clipping planes, we all know about clipping planes. Take that clipping plane of what you have. You know, maybe you have a handful of sections, a handful of plans, because you're not sure exactly which one's best. That's a great thing to kind of talk with Matthew and Aaron about. How is that kind of best describing? We can also do certain things where you're showing maybe more than one section or more than one plan in one drawing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then based on the feedback that you got today, I would edit those drawings there to incorporate that feedback better, as opposed to changing your massing and then recutting. Yes?
So just take the plane, make it 2D and edit it there? Okay.
Yeah. It's super important to design through these drawings, because this is what you're gonna be presenting at the final review. No one will see your Rhino model. Yes, you're gonna have a massing model. It'll be, you know, you can see here, I'll come back and we'll have a week of desk prints, and I'll do a little mini lecture basically revisiting this and going a little bit more into depth on probably some unit plans or floor plan layouts. Then we're gonna go on the 17th to my office, and I'm going to give you guys a model making workshop. And we're gonna talk about both the kind of the planning, what I call the planning of the model, which will be the kind of how in Rhino you scale that down and design this thing. I think you're really gonna be designing the overall massing of the project through the model. You're gonna be designing the internal workings and kind of conceptual clarity through the plan and the section. And it's not like you're gonna have that one-to-one Rhino model that you're figuring everything out in. I think you really wanna figure it out through these drawings, because there's also just not time for that. You know, we don't have time to develop these super intricate Rhino models and then spend all of our time just like cutting and drawing that thing. You just draw, and if, you know, I even say this to like my housing students, maybe the section you draw and the plan you draw somewhere on the 7th floor, like there's a weird thing and it might not quite work out, that's fine. That's not what this is about. This is what I mean, that you don't have to design the entire project. You want the guts of those drawings to describe the intent of how this thing would work, and the plan needs to work as we see it, the section needs to work as we see it, but the other parts of the building that we're not necessarily seeing in those things don't have to be all figured out, right? Obviously, you know, Frogtown's pretty flat, the plan is gonna cover a vast majority of everything. You know, K-Town, we're really gonna see very little in plan, probably, you know, one floor in plan, a lot of it is pretty stacked for you guys, so it'll be pretty representative of the other plans. And the section will say, will have some kind of cut of the entire building that is really kind of doing us the inner working. The section in Frogtown will be a little less exciting, very long and flat. These drawings are gonna be big at 1/16 inch scale. The large Frogtown site, for example, not Stephen's biggest site, but, I mean, I think it's technically, I don't know, but it'll be about a 36 by 48 sheet. So like, you know, a 4-foot roll out of the plotter. It'll be a big drawing, the section will be the same scale, obviously it'll be kind of a different, you know, size. We'll deal with all of that. But they'll be big drawings, so they'll have a certain level of detail, yes?
So it's based off the feedback we got today,
Mhm.
are we first changing our like massing and everything and then do this?
I would cut plans and sections first, off the massings that you presented today. And then I would change those plans and sections based on the feedback that you got. Don't worry about it matching the model yet. Of course, if you need to do a little bit, you know, to kind of get that right cut, it's working a little bit between, but I don't want you to be, because then you're just back to floating around in Rhino, and again, what we're gonna see is the plan and section. So like for you, you know, show us in plan, so you're probably like, you know, maybe at Frogtown, right? Maybe thinking about that dashed line of how the cars are moving underneath, and then we're seeing how the organization of the buildings on the top are related to that car down below. Do that in plan, don't worry about kind of remassing it, just move your squares around. Like the plan and section, they equal massing, but get those drawn, it's easier to kind of draw those things 2D, make it be the thing that you tell the story that you wanted to say, and then we'll go back to the massing as we start to work on the model as kind of reconciling those two things. Does that make sense to everybody? It feels a little foreign, especially because in the age of computers, we do things 3D and then we cut them. But for for everything before this, this is how buildings are really thought about, and these are the core drawings. These are the core, you know, if we were doing a museum or a concert hall or something that had a little bit more of a loose type of program, and where the form can start to become the thing that is more driving it, I would maybe have us start with models or something different. But housing is really about, you've got circulation, access, and units, and you're making this thing work. And those things are really clearly shown in kind of plan and sectional relationships. So it'll feel weird, but try to work it. Okay? Alright. And then, yeah, we'll do desk crits. There's gonna be a guest lecture from my old boss in Chicago. His name is Jaime Torres, at Canopy. And then we'll also go on a site visit to some construction sites. That's a fun thing, if you guys are doing good, if you're giving me the work. And there's a couple kind of just like interim pinups we'll be kind of checking and looking at those drawings. But again, really, these will be the things that you're working on the entire time. You're gonna be working on 4 drawings. And then at the end, you'll kind of do the diagrams. You'll build up a really basic kind of massing that equals those things and do the diagrams again that we're doing today.
Will we be pinning up the diagrams we had today on the final as well?
Not the same ones, probably, because
So
they'll
we have to
change a
change
little
them
bit.
everything.
But yeah, so those will be, yeah, I mean, I think things are gonna change, as they should, you know? I think hopefully you guys, I think today was really helpful for you guys. I think good feedback overall. I think overall, the Frogtown sites are a little weaker. I think it's because they're so open. So figure out what it is that's the DNA that you kind of locked in Koreatown for most of you, because you have so much more constraint there. How does that translate in Frogtown? How do I think kind of what was talked about in Preston's review at the very beginning, like what are the hierarchies of the components at play here? How are they working the same or different across the sites? You guys feel pretty, yeah, so spend a little bit of time editing the plans and sections that you cut from the model you had for today, and show them to Matthew, and see what he says. You know, they'll be sketchy, probably just like boxes for units, zones for circulation. And I know that you guys haven't drawn plans and sections of something this big, not even close to this big before. So you're gonna see today a lot of plans of that. I don't know how much is in here. That'll give you some ideas of kind of how to develop that. And I think along with this is coming unit plans, which I'm gonna talk a little bit about here. More so as a way for you to make sure that the organization of your units within your plans and sections allows for the things that will need to be there, like access to light and air, where you come into the unit, things like that. I also would encourage you, Daisy, this is a little bit to you, think about the shape and the scale of the units that you're producing. Again, if you have a bunch of different units that are all different, look all different, you're gonna have to draw that many more unit plans. The more you can kind of standardize at least components of the unit that you might place into somewhere else that could look a little different, the easier this is gonna be for you. So as you're doing this, think about how that starts to play into it. I think most of you are in pretty good shape there. Daisy's probably in more shape there in terms of, yeah, that's too big. Yeah, so cut up, yeah, I mean, you know, you'll start to see. And I encourage you guys, as you cut those plans in sections, I would grab like a car, a person, a bed, a couple little blocks, get them at the right scale, and just kind of have them floating around there so that you understand how big these things that you're dealing with are and what the sizes of stuff are, because it's all a little abstract right now, I think, and it'll start to get more in depth. Questions at this point? You guys feeling okay? No? I'm feeling really good about today. I think good feedback, things are looking good. I'm excited for this semester. Okay, I'm gonna give you some drawing conventions. This, again, I'm not expecting anything to this level of detail for Tuesday and what you'll have for Aaron. These things will continue to kind of build up and change and shift. But I want to put all of this level of detail in front of you so that you have this to be thinking about as you're laying stuff out, and you can reference this PDF. I'll upload it to Canvas. So drawing conventions. Pretty straightforward. We've talked about line types before. Doors, different types of doors. Think about, you know, don't put a little tiny door at the front big grand lobby entrance of your building with like a little 3-foot door that you kind of come in. Think about different types of doors. Here's kind of how they might be drawn. Windows, it's the same thing. Windows are about to become a big thing for you. So maybe in your unit plans or in your floor plans, maybe you're not drawing the window like this with a double line, but you're sort of indicating with a little box or something where those might start to go. That's going to start to be the thing that feeds into your unit plan organization, because that's the hardest thing, is getting the light and air access to the rooms that need it. Which rooms need access to light and air?
Bedroom.
Bedroom. Which other rooms?
Kitchen.
Nope.
Bathroom.
Living room.
No bathroom.
The living room and the bedrooms need access to light and air. And that means operable windows. Skylights don't count as operable windows. Bathrooms and kitchens do not necessarily, although always nice. The more light you can bring into the apartment, the better. But also keep in mind that furniture goes on walls, things go on walls. If your whole building is glass, you're gonna be kind of looking up at those things. We talked a little bit about that on the site visit, and how you kind of, what's the right size and the sill height for a residential kind of window. Okay.
Nice.
Just to kind of a look at sort of how those things might start to come together. This lecture is also kind of pieced together from a lot of other stuff, but I think this is just kind of thinking about line type and how you're kind of communicating stuff. Again, not expecting to see this on Tuesday, but
in the bottom, when you use the final piece, you're gonna expect dimensions and everything on it?
no dimensions. This is annotated. You guys don't need to be annotating things. You'll probably be looking at something more like this. So you'll have double thick walls for sure. You're gonna be drawing furniture for sure. And I like the kind of red arrow in this case showing the entrance into the unit. And in this case, this project all really hinged on this offset from the existing garage. So I kind of highlighted that in red, almost kind of in a diagrammatic way. This is sort of a diagrammatic plan as opposed to something that a builder might read and look at. This level of detail is probably what you're gonna be looking at 116. Room organizations. Building Construction Illustrated, Francis D.K. Ching. Have any of you guys heard of this book?
I have it.
You have it? Great. I reference it probably once to 3 times a week in the office. It's full of sticky notes and stuff. Could be a great thing for you guys to purchase. I'm sure the library has some copies. I have an online PDF that I'll also upload to Canvas. Ton of really good information in there. This is from that. The bathroom. This is just kind of talking about the general components of the bathroom and how they work. Here are some basic layouts. Again, people have been designing bathrooms for a long, long time. Don't reinvent the wheel here, especially at this early stage of kind of unit plan development. Get a box that's the right size and be working with that in kind of your, well, again, I'm not expecting you guys to necessarily have like bathroom zones allocated for Tuesday, but as you're working through them. And there are various clearances that we'll get into once we're working a little closer. I like to show this plan because here's a lot of kind of typical bathroom layout. As you get further, you might think about if this is what I would consider the kind of exploded bathroom. As a girl with 4 sisters, you can imagine what our bathroom looked like as we were growing up and how precious time in the bathroom was. What I like about this plan is that you have shower, toilet, and sink all accessible on their own so that 3 people could be using this bathroom at once. So just kind of things for you to think about in terms of the generic way that it's done versus how you might think about it in your space. And that's what that bathroom looks like. This is one of my favorite. I've also gone through and put the name and the name of the architect and the name of the project on every single slide. These are all good things for you to kind of look up and reference. This talks a little bit about the different plumbing fixtures and the clearances around them. The kitchen space. Some general kitchen layouts. An important thing to think about is the relationship between the 3 main components of a working kitchen. The food storage, refrigerator, big one, the sink, and the cook surface. Yep. So this is kind of talking about sort of triangle organizations, which has always been the most effective kind of way of working at it. A linear layout also works, but ideally you're trying to kind of minimize distances between those things in order to kind of make the kitchen efficient to use. And this then talks a little bit about where those things might go and how much space they take up. And again, we'll get into these details later, but I just wanted you to have them in front of you. This is dimensions.com. I think it's a very helpful website. It has furniture blocks, first of all. I think there's like different, you can get some stuff for free, you can make an account and maybe pay for some stuff. Anyway, generally how much space things should have around them and how big things like a double bed are, general room layouts for bedrooms and things like that. I think at 8'6" is a pretty minimal kind of dimension for a bedroom. So as this is going to become relevant as you have a 6,000 square foot unit, which we're maybe not going to have anymore, and you're trying to fit 5 bedrooms in it, how is that wall with the window access getting divided up and broken into these rooms? I don't want to see 5 foot wide, 20 feet long bedrooms because that rectangle is not really usable with bedroom furniture, right? I think that this is an important slide too. This is the same space, right? Done in 2 very different ways. And I like to show this slide because this talks about kind of 2 very different ways of living, right? I shared a bedroom for a long time growing up. It's very typical. Again, I think our units are a little large in general in this studio right now, and that when you're working on this light and air access, things might get a little bit smaller. Thinking about just the difference between living with your sibling in the same room, ideas about privacy, versus kind of splitting that and, having this very different relationship to someone and this very different idea about public and private within the unit. This is sort of a weird place for this to be, but this is an interesting apartment. I think it actually comes up in here. I'm gonna talk about it in a different slide because it's somewhere else in here. Again, bedroom layouts, living room furniture, they have all that kind of stuff there. I would, again, grab these things as blocks just so you kind of understand the scale of what's happening. Stairs, everybody please write this down. Your stair, so, okay, here's a stair. This part of the stair, does anyone know what that's called?
Which one?
The riser, great. Your riser can be a maximum of 7.5 inches, max, okay?
Minimum 4, right?
Sure. I don't think that you're really gonna be dealing with minimums too much in the stair. The stair is a big thing. A lot of you have 2-story units. You're gonna be able to fit stairs in these units. The stairs are a good thing to put in places where you don't have light. But the double high space that's kind of created by that is also something really interesting to think about. Think about those sectional connections. 2-story units are lovely. Think about taking advantage of that. If it's just a big floor on top of another floor with just the hole big enough for the stair, it's kind of just like a 1-story unit, right? How can you think about introducing some double high spaces? This is kind of relevant for internal to the unit and also in your circulation and in more of your kind of public spaces. How are you bringing that kind of openness sectionally into your section? What's this one called?
Run.
Run. This
The
is called the tread. That's where your foot goes. This, I'm gonna call the minimum for this 11 inches. Okay? So I'm telling you this because let's say your floors are 10 feet apart, right? The first thing you should do is you should take 10, multiply it by 12. I've got 120 vertical inches. Now I'm gonna divide that by 7.5. Does someone wanna do that for me really quickly? It's gonna be about 15. 16 flat. Nice. So if you have 10-foot floors, it means you're looking at 16 risers in order to get me there, right? And that means I need 15 treads, because the landing is kind of at the top. Okay? And those treads are 11 inches long. So that means that you need that much length of space to fit your stair in. You can do a stair, you can look at the chain book here, sorry. Some different ways that stairs can be organized. They can be spirals, they can switch back on each other, they can just be straight runs. You guys can kind of get creative with that. Maybe in some of your bigger spaces or even in the unit, you do kind of like a, so if you have triangular sort of zones, maybe that starts to become a sort of special stair, right? Some of those spaces you can kind of fit that in. The stair needs to be 3 feet wide, minimum, right? Okay, and at the top and bottom, you need a 3-foot by 3-foot landing, okay? And remember, let's say I have a staircase, I'm just gonna erase this. Beautiful. Here's my floor, right? I need a hole in this floor in order for my head not to hit the ceiling. I've had this conversation a lot of times with third-year students that don't understand that you need a hole above the stairs in order to fit them. And it's like, I say that kind of jokingly, but it's like, it's hard. These are really kind of spatial relationships between plan and section and the human body that are difficult to kind of grasp. Thinking spatially doesn't come naturally to everybody. It's important for being an architect. You can always kind of learn these things, but you know, how, you know, and that's where you're kind of, you know, a guardrail there, there's your landing. This is all of a sudden now this kind of sectional relationship between these two floors. So make sure that you're also thinking about the implications on the second floor of that stair, i.e. a hole, so that you can do it. Again, the minimum head height in a stair is 6'8". So this thing could hang over a little bit. We have projects where we really kind of capitalize on that. There's a little bit of, you don't need the, especially if you have 10-foot floors, you don't need the entire floor to be a hole, but that hole needs to be big enough so that at least at 6'8", this guy's really tall, you're good. Does that make sense? Okay, that'll be kind of an important one going forward. So stairs, again, all kinds of stairs. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about unit organizations. I've made a series of diagrams, sort of thinking about objects, perimeters, and zones. There's a ton of ways to design units. I really think, look at as many unit plans as you can. We've all talked about Divisare, right? Great one. You can look at plans of apartments. Like, just, you know, while you're on spring break, like, just kind of spend an hour, look through some stuff, get inspired. Objects. So, things that don't need light, for example. These diagrams are a little bit based on more of like an ADU or a building that might have access to light on more than on like all four sides. But thinking about this in terms of your unit, the objects in this case can start to divide space in a nice way. I would try to eliminate a lot of like walls that just separate spaces and try to pack those walls with program that you also need to include. Closets are a really good way to do that. If you've got 2 bedrooms, for example, right? Pretty easy to do something like this. Give them each a closet. That wall starts to become kind of programmed with something, and it also acts as a nice sound barrier between spaces. Other kind of larger programs can do that too. This is just a series of diagrams showing the way that different objects, or sort of, you know, this could be a kitchen and bathroom sort of chunk, we'll see that coming up, can start to divide this space with something more than just walls. Sorry, bear with me on this. The spaces between them become kind of like transition zones, and you're producing these different size shapes by the way that you're kind of positioning that chunk of object. Some plans that kind of start to do that. Again, these are maybe more in the size of like a unit plan for this one, right? See how that's working? We have the bathroom and laundry here. There's not really any just walls in this plan, right? This is sort of acting as a separation of the space between these two things. Another one, in this case, the bedroom has kind of become this sort of isolated object. Again, you have a sort of living space over here, kitchen and bathroom that don't need light, kind of occupying that center, and a bedroom back over here. Another one, there's a lot of these. I'm just gonna kind of go quickly through them. Here's the way that that object even starts to get kind of articulated as that object. This is that kind of kitchen, that's this plan. You can see the holes, the little skylights there. More and more. This is sort of starting to become a sectional object, dividing the space. Okay, perimeters might be another way to do this. This is where that photo I took before. So you've got an apartment with a lot of stuff in it, right? These blocks here are kind of starting to represent sort of program and also furniture. You can start to kind of pack walls with that furniture and program. Kitchens are a great thing to do this, especially walls that don't have light, right? You start to pack that full of closets, kitchens, things like that, and all of a sudden kind of, you know, these are just showing how that can kind of grow out. Here's a long skinny unit. Hopefully you guys don't have units as long and skinny as this. Notice how this entire sort of wall is sort of packed with stuff. In this case, even like a Murphy bed that folds down. The kitchen becomes that thing. Here you see it kind of, I think we're entering here. This is representing like an overhead threshold. You've got kitchen, you know, shelves and living space, the stair and the bathroom are kind of packed into that chunk. This is how it goes up on the second floor. This is a little extreme. In section, it's also kind of having that idea of these sort of thickened perimeters.
So tiny.
Here's one that's like, again, the bathroom over here, these things kind of, this was also kind of incorporating a little bit of an object. This is a cool renovation project, with this kind of addition of this wall, and all of that program is kind of packed inside of there, right? Closet,
It's unique.
a little bathroom that starts to be there, kitchen is sort of a part of that.
Feels claustrophobic.
Maybe. The stairs starting to kind of become packed as part of that on the side. Again, you can kind of look through these. This is more like the whole bedroom starts to get packed, bathroom, kitchen, and you have this big open space in the middle. It's a little wild. This is that project that I showed the picture of, and I said I'd talk about it again. Here you kind of come in, the whole perimeter of this is a similar to what some of you guys might have, this is the only wall with window, right? This is all packed up with stuff, there's an island and a little bathroom attached to it, packed up. Nice window in the bathroom, that's kind of nice. These are bedrooms that are sort of actually occupying that exterior wall and then using these kind of doors that you could close off. This is really like a bed cave. There's nothing else in there besides the bed. During the day, you could open that and allow the light to kind of come in, and at night you could close that for some level of privacy.
Where's
So, sorry?
Where's the door?
It's, see these tracks on the ceiling? It slides out of this pocket. You can kind of see how that's drawn in plan. So there's that big pocket, and these all slide. So maybe you're kind of working on something like this, especially if you put a lot of kids or something that each have their own little private space, but you're not making these big 120 square foot bedrooms that are eating into the rest of the apartment, right? This is like a little kind of living space and a lot of openness in the bedroom. You know, this could be a 3-bedroom apartment. It's very small, right? So some tricks and things that you guys can think about. Packed perimeters again. This one's really nice. Again, this is not really super relevant for you because it has all these sides. A nice one. Again, you guys can look a little closer at these if you want to. Some level change within the apartment, kind of all centered around this courtyard with an open top that's like sunken down from these other rooms that are on the perimeter. Zones, this is pretty important and especially good for a one-sided window look. These zones could be wet zones and dry zones, private zones, public zones, kid zones, adult zones, things like that. Zones can be kind of distributed in different ways. Then you have these little thresholds sort of between potentially. Okay. Here's sort of a public and private with a living and kitchen, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. This one kind of in 4 ways around. Again, public and private. This is good, you can kind of see, I mean, in this case, the bedroom is borrowing light from the living room. I'd like you guys to try to avoid this kind of thing if you can. We can get there if we really need to, but this is a glass door. You can also do it with walls that are low, so you have clerestory light that's coming in above. There are code rules about that, but for now I'd like us to try to have all of our bedrooms have access to an exterior wall and window. This is a great one. This is a cool project, also by that same firm that did the yellow bathroom. So this is actually like a storefront on like a commercial street that someone turned into this little studio apartment. We put the bed up there behind those little shutters. Little cross wall making these different zones. More zones. Passing through into that back zone. Oh, this is a nice one where the zones are kind of articulated in materiality. Some of the diagrams of that, and that's how that's kind of starting to look in real floor plate organizations, scaling up to the overall apartment size, or the overall kind of apartment building size. We've seen this plan before, right? Again, regular units and allowing that internal space in the middle to become something more dynamic. I think, Paige, this is kind of good for you, maybe, like, I would really think about drawing that circulation in your plan and your section and letting that really describe the branching, and then your sort of fitting unit around in between there. I've seen a couple of these before, I think, maybe. Again, the kind of circulation and core being on that interior. You guys have these rough ideas kind of drawn out, but giving you some plans to just look at as reference. And notice here that the kind of, this is sort of taking the irregularity of the shape and making these things much more kind of straight. I think all of your lines should probably be kind of perpendicular to that exterior wall, so you're getting square spaces that are easy to kind of fit stuff into. And then things like bathrooms and maybe a like dining room off of that can start to kind of occupy those spaces. There's an axon of that. Again, here's kind of chunks of core. I think we've seen this one before. That's the elevation of it. This is a weird one. I really like this one. Again, you have, this is kind of like a Moret duplex sort of look, where there's sort of two apartments here, one you come into here, one you come into here. The bathrooms and things like that are all sort of organized around that interior. You have sort of circulation between rooms also on that interior, and all of the living spaces, and in this case even the bathrooms, have access to that exterior wall. Again, you guys can look at these a little bit more dynamically. And these are probably gonna be around the scale of drawing that you guys are doing. This is a little too small. So the level of, I don't like this one, I should take this one out. These units are too skinny. This is them, I think they're too skinny. But that, you know, kind of incorporating a similar bed cave object sort of situation. This one's nice, some terraces, also in Monet Energy. Again, notice how all of those programs of bath and kitchen are really centered in the internal part of the plan, so that all of these bedrooms have that access to the light in the air. This is kind of a good one for you, Zion. How the hallway is starting to kind of not always have the same relationship to the units, and kind of maze and meander through a little bit, pushing out to the perimeter in certain parts and cutting through the building in certain parts. Another one. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna go back to that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this one I think is also sort of relevant for your mazing.
Take the picture of the names, dude.
Well, I'm gonna upload this, you guys will have all of
Okay,
this.
I'll know this.
Yeah. This is that really nice Bruther building that I love. Another one of theirs. This is sort of, well, it has some daisy shapes a little bit. But these are each, I mean, this could be something for you to kind of think about, maybe those 6,000 square foot that you're now calling kind of one unit. Maybe that becomes something more like this, where it gets broken up into one or two, or, you know, sorry, 2 or 3 or even 4, and you can start to have these kind of weirder shaped plates with that central area more free, and a kind of clearer organization around the perimeter of those unique shapes. I know you guys are tired, I'm sorry. This is what you kind of get when you think about that core taking the weird shape, right? Everyone's kind of drawing vertical circulation right now as boxes, which is completely fine for where we're at. But you know, as these, you know, here, the units become much more kind of regular in thickness, that interior space kind of gets weird. You can see here, there's like some holes, that's a cut in the floor plate next to the stair. That's a cut in the floor plate next to the stair. And these are the kinds of, makes that vertical circulation much more dynamic and a nice kind of light-filled space. So let these spaces be the thing that kind of get a little weird and special. It makes the procession up into your unit much nicer than just walking in like a rectangular box that's sort of stacked on top of each other. And it allows you to bring regularity to the size of the, or the shape of the unit. This all, I know I'm throwing so much at you guys, but I just wanna put these in front of you. How are you doing? Is helpful? Good?
Yes.
Okay, okay, we're almost done. Again, this is a little also you. See those, this is that project I've shown this photo before to you guys. This is a little weird. But again, with the exception of some of these walls here and maybe these ones, the kind of regularity and squareness kind of happens in the center. And then the perimeter of these rooms can start to be sort of different. And like you could maybe take this, right? And copy it into multiple units, and then the edge or whatever can be different or triangle shaped or weird. But the core of what you're doing is copy paste. You want to get as much copy paste going as you can. That's this diagram essentially. Where the core and everything is consistent, the units become a little bit different, and the bathrooms are sort of plugged into that core. You can see that that middle part doesn't change. So you can see for yourself. What'd you say?
That's interesting.
This one?
No, the
This one?
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like a ninja star.
You like that ninja style? Yeah, some of these bedrooms get a little weird. This should be here, but I don't like this.
Is that
Wait.
plan?
This is a plan, yep. Here's the core,
It's an elevation.
an elevator and stairs, right? Coming into the unit here, bedroom, bedroom. This looks like a living room. This must be the kitchen here, dining room. Seating area, this looks like, these look like lounge chairs, maybe that's a terrace. Not sure. But I put this, yeah, cause like imagine trying to sweep that little corner. And I don't know, these columns, then you just have these giant columns in your unit, I don't know. Don't do this. This is nice. A few kind of diagonal walls that are kind of creating a little bit of a dynamic space out here. But notice how that's kind of in relationship to this diagonal, right? That becomes a right corner.
3 bedroom. 3 bedroom.
Yeah, this looks like you have, again, the kind of object in the middle, holding bathrooms and a kitchen. A living and dining with nice access to light, and it looks like there's a terrace here. These look like, that's probably some kind of mechanical shaft. This looks like a hallway closet, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, they're a little skinny, but they sort of work. And then what looks like a primary bath bedroom, and this is a laundry, probably. I don't know what that is. Doesn't really matter, maybe a pantry. This is nice too, kind of using like a fillet language in the bathrooms. And again, things are pretty regular, and the irregular shape just kind of ends up being the edge of that room where there's still square corners for you to organize sort of furniture. This is really similar to the one we were looking at before. I don't know about this. Let's not do this.
Very symmetrical.
I don't think anyone's really here. I wonder what exactly is happening. I think this is a terrace. What'd you say?
It looks like a coffin.
It does look like a coffin. It's
It's
coffin
like a
shaped.
terrace kitchen.
Yeah, it looks like the kitchen is kind of pushed back, which is a little
You can
interesting.
dine in the, you know, in the
Hmm?
light. Dine in the light.
Yeah, exactly. And then this is sort of, this is sort of an interesting move. It's like they've sort of taken this wall that was here and sort of pushed it back.
It's interesting.
It's interesting. I think,
But don't do it.
you know, and it looks like 2 bedrooms, a little powder room, and a bath. It looks kind of nice.
How does it feel though?
I'd be a little dizzy in there, I think.
It's like a maze.
I don't take notes.
No,
I don't know about this one.